Is to go to the October 26th presidential poll, but the closer we get, the more uncertain the political landscape seems to get, with the two leading protagonists in the election digging in and planning more activities in what could be a defining week ahead of the fresh poll. NASA has now called for mass action that's beginning Tuesday to push IBC officials out of office. Deputy President William Ruto has meanwhile claimed that NASA has been sending emissaries to them to negotiate for the formation of a coalition government. Still expected this week are amendments to the Elections Act hinted at by Jubilee that could take away judges' powers to annul disputed elections, while the Director of Public Prosecutions, Keriako Tobiko, has called for investigations into irregularities and illegalities in the August 8th election. And as all this happens, seems so unlikely now, IBC is expected to meet President Kenyatta and NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga and or their representatives on the way forward ahead of the polls. All this happening or expected to happen this week. In studio, we have MPs John Badi and Kimani Ichung'wah and lawyer Steve Ogolla. Talk to us. The hashtag is GamePlan2017 on Twitter. You can also text us on 22422. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time for us tonight. Honorable Badi, I'll begin with you. Now you're saying you'll begin demos against IBC to remove officials, including Chiloba and others. That is on Tuesday. Why have you resorted to doing this?
First of all, Hussein, I think it should be understood that we started communicating way back and actually indicating to IBC what we want. But as it stands now, it is very apparent that IBC is not willing to cooperate in this process. We all know why the elections, or rather the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta was annulled by the Supreme Court. And we thought that IBC would do things differently. But you see the way IBC is behaving, they're behaving like it is business as usual. But things are not the same. They have been indicted. There are people who have made mistakes. It doesn't really make sense for Jubilee to even imagine that we would go to another election with the same people who bungled the August 8th election. And we have communicated to them that they should take action, but action is not forthcoming. And we are aware that this is not of their own making. We know where the pressure is coming from, and we are telling them that now I think we are going to ask Kenyans to come out and make sure that we have the right people to manage this election going forward, because we must have election within 60 days. You saw yesterday the Director of Public Prosecutions has ordered investigations, which you also called for as NASA in IBC. Why can't you wait? And this is, in fact, a text even from Wamalo in Kitale, who says NASA wrote to DPP asking him to initiate an investigation against IBC officials, which he has done. Why can't they be patient and wait for the report? I think Kenyans need to understand that these are two parallel events. Number one, there is the criminal prosecution, the criminal culpability of the officials of IBC who bungled the election. And there is also the management aspect of it, the managerial or administrative action to be taken by IBC. You don't have to wait for DPP to take action for you to get the right people to run this election and remove the people who bungled the election from the commission. You don't have to wait for criminal culpability. So what we are saying is that time is running out. We want these individuals
to leave,
mismanaged the electoral
on what
process,
basis?
To leave.
On what basis?
On the basis that they bungled.
What have they done? Like,
what they
yes, there
have
been irregularities
what
and
they have done is known.
How do you determine who has done what? That's what I'm asking.
You see, you're saying this thing is is in black and white. The report of the registrar of the Supreme Court is there. The Supreme Court judges have talked about illegalities and irregularities. There are individuals who managed the Form 34As and 34Bs, 34Cs. They are known. The only form that you would say the chairman handled exclusively is Form 34C. The rest, Form 34A, Form 34B, is known who managed them. Secondly, we know the people who refused to obey the court order. The Supreme Court issued an order of the servers to be opened, for investigation to be done. And you heard the judgment of the Supreme Court judges. They were very categorical that one of the reasons for annulling this election is because the order that they gave was not complied with. Who is supposed to be responsible for that? It's known. We know who was responsible for the IT system in IBC. So you cannot sit and assume that these people are not known, that there are some investigations that are supposed to be done. As DPP does his investigation to put together watertight evidence for prosecution, we are saying IBC does not need or does not require that kind of evidence to take administrative action.
Okay, let me
thank you, Hussein. And first, let me take this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable John Buddy for his appointment. It's only his position and that of Wetangula as minority leader. Congratulate him for that appointment. Two, you've had the Honorable John Buddy say that IEBC has refused to cooperate. And I just want to draw your attention to the provisions of Article 249, I think Article 2. That says IEBC, indeed not just IEBC, it talks about independent commissions and office holders of independent constitutional offices, that they shall work without, actually if I quote for you, it says that the commissions and the holders of independent offices are independent and not subject to direction or control by any person or authority. So indeed you can hear from the chairman of ODM and the leader of minority in the National Assembly, NASA's minority leader, that they want to direct, they want to control IEBC. Indeed, they're even going further, asking for IEBC's cooperation for them to institute what they want and how they want the commission to run its affairs. And opposition has been clear that constitutionally that is an independent commission that should be let to run the elections in accordance with the law.
Independently. Independently, however, we saw Chebukati saying, I am waiting for that detailed judgment and I'll take action within the commission. We have seen memos where he's actually called, including one last week, he called for action and it hasn't happened. So IBC within themselves, even after promising they'll take action, nothing has been done. Let
me say this, Hussein. Those memos, of course, you can see the games that are being played. The memo is done. An internal memo, it's leaked. I've also seen news that apparently his PA or somebody has been suspended because of the leakage of these memos. But that aside, we should allow then Chebukati to do whatever he needs to do from his detailed judgment he got from the Supreme Court. Allow, and that is what I would have expected. And I did call on NASA last week. Please then give all the evidence that you may have presented to court or evidence that you may have pointing at the culpability of anybody. Because remember, the Supreme Court said they did not find any criminal culpability on any commissioner or any officer of the commission. Therefore, for IEBC to say, for NASA to say that they're now going to demonstrate to force people out of office, let me say it is within their constitutional rights to demonstrate, to picket, but I only hope that the demonstrations will be as peaceful as others have been that were not NASA, because all of NASA's demonstrations have not been peaceful. Okay. But then again, Hussein, let them also allow the office of the DPP, which again is another independent constitutional office, then to look at what they have submitted, if they have submitted any evidence. And John Buddy says it correctly, that those people who may have not signed a form, the person who may not have stamped, the person who may have used a form without a security seal, those people are known. There are particular presiding officers down in the constituencies, particular returning officers. Let the investigative agencies that are charged with that responsibility do that work. Okay. And I have said, for us, we would even expect that the DPP office will even take further to that, to even take the investigations to the Supreme Court, to look at the office of the registrar, the chief registrar of the High Court, of the Supreme Court, to look at issues that have now, we have seen pointers that actually the judges might have relied on a fraudulent report done by the registrar of the Supreme Court.
Honorable Buddy, very briefly, I'll bring you in, Civil Gola shortly.
You know, I just want to pick from where Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah has left, that the registrar probably prepared a fraudulent report. It should be understood that this report was prepared in the presence of representatives from both Jubilee and NASA, and there were experts who were sitting in this particular committee that was looking at the systems and looking at these forms. So it is not correct to say that this report was exclusively the work of the Registrar of the Supreme Court. I've seen Jubilee now targeting and aiming their arsenals at the wrong people, because if their agents were there and saw what happened and agreed to this report, then one judge has written exclusively to condemn that report, and no one has really checked and counter-checked what she has written. I think that is not being fair to the Registrar of the Supreme Court. But that is not to say that anyone, if you feel that the Registrar of the Supreme Court has done something that is wrong, fine, let that investigation be instituted. But
which they have petitioned, I believe.
Which they have petitioned, yes.
But very briefly, we've heard from the rally today in Nairobi, when the presidential candidate Raila Odinga was speaking, saying on Tuesday we will go for them. We'll remove them out of office, or we'll push for their exit in office. How are you envisaging Tuesday's demos to be? Are they demonstrations outside, or what are you going to do exactly? You know, Kenyans, let me tell you, this constitution that we have today is very robust, and this constitution recognizes the Bill of Rights. It is our right to picket. It is our right to show our displeasure in a peaceful manner. It is our right to call for anybody holding a public office to quit that public office. Okay. So so we are going... By the way, we have always been conducting peaceful demonstration until when the government decides to act as goons. Actually, if you look at our demonstrations, they have been peaceful to the extent that the police come in with their ruthlessness is when it turns violent. I have never... yeah, Steve, you'll respond. Oh, no, Shungi, so let me get Steve.
The same things. What we are witnessing here on this panel and what we are seeing out there, this is now what we call elite bickering. And it's the kind of bickering that will set this country back on the brink of precipice again, if left unchecked or unattended. If you look at the Constitution, the procedure for removal of IBC commissioners, or maybe the CEO, Section 10 of the IBC Act, for instance, provides that if you want to remove the CEO, and that is the law, and we are not allowed to depart from the legal provision, that you must give a written notification of the intention to remove the CEO, and you must be given an opportunity to respond. Now, Article 251 on removal of the commissioners is also a very detailed and elaborate procedure that requires anybody who wants to seek the removal of a commissioner to petition Parliament. I mean, just restating what is provided in the law, Parliament shall consider the petition, and if it is meritorious, shall advise the President to establish a tribunal. You get? So if you must process NASA's plans for Tuesday through the lenses that is provided for in the Constitution, and if you process them through those lenses, I'm afraid I must say that I find those the approach taken by NASA to be of dubious legality, in the sense that while it's anchored on Article 37, which allows you to picket, but it seems to host clear provisions of the law under Article 251 and under Section 10 of the IBC Act. And you see now, I think NASA has been promoting an image that it cares for the rule of law, and Jubilee also has been promoting that image. However, now what we are seeing is a strong indication that the elite don't have a settled culture of constitutional fidelity. There is not a culture in this country. I'm talking about the political culture, a settled political culture of fidelity to the rule of law. So you think you should demand compliance with the rule of law if it works for you, and you think that you can abdicate your responsibility to obey and operate within the law if it doesn't if it's not convenient for you. And I'd like to hear from Mheshimiwa how NASA intends to navigate around provisions of the law, Section 10 of the IBC Act, insofar as the IBC CEO is concerned, the removal is ordained by law. Because if the challenge is this, if you oust those provisions, he is likely to seek protection from the court. And the court is duty-bound to read the law and disbar anybody who wants to oust them through a process that is not authorized by the law. So I think let us process our demands through the lenses of the law. Let him respond to that, specifically what you just talked about.
You know, my friend Ogol, I wanted to ask him whether he's aware that we have written severally to IBC calling for the removal from office of these people. I'm sure he's aware. And so if you are aware, then you should know that we have been taking systematic steps to ensure that these people leave office. What has happened is that IEBC is not acting. Those who are supposed to take action on Chiloba and his team, the people we have mentioned, are not in a hurry, or they don't see the need, or they're complacent in taking the required action. And if that is the case, Kenyans want a credible election. The days that we have between now and the end of the 60,
it's actually 31 days.
It's actually it's 31 plus a few more days.
35 days.
Yeah, 35 days. Now, you expect us to still sit and wait for those procedures to take place, for someone to see the reality and start instituting the process of removing Chiloba, and we want election to be conducted within 60 days.
Okay.
To me, I think that is being, if we sit pretty and wait for that to happen, then we are going, as NASA, will be acting unconstitutionally.
Okay. You know, Hussein, listening to John Buddy, you just see the hypocrisy within NASA, right from the top leadership to that the National Assembly level of John Buddy. Ogola has spoken about Section 10 of the IEBC Act. The letters that NASA has been writing to IEBC are not anything near the provisions of Section 10 of the IEBC Act. They have not made any measures in line with Article 251 of the Constitution in terms of removal of commissioners or any other independent constitutional office holder. Therefore, John Buddy cannot purport that the letters, the political letters they've been issuing in the media or in their press conferences, those are letters that are in line with the provisions of the Section 10 that Steve Ogola is talking about here. Fidelity to the rule of law. If you want to see the fidelity to the rule of law, Steve, you will just need to look at Jubilee's actions. We were never satisfied. We never agreed with the Supreme Court. What did we do? We said we respect that decision and we will move on. We will comply by it. We are ready. We will go into the elections at the date that will be set by IEBC. When we went, when even Jubilee supporters went to demonstrate outside Supreme Court, even knowing what we know about what happened in the registrar's office, we never went to evict anybody from their offices.
Although you were, even after agreeing with the Supreme Court ruling, you were, and the Supreme Court, but the judges, even the JSC talked about it, led by Maraga, it was now threatening judges, not criticizing the judges.
Maraga indeed is the one who was trying to intimidate our supporters not to demonstrate against him. And let me also take this opportunity to tell Maraga that Jubilee, NASA, or indeed any Kenyan can demonstrate and picket against him and his decisions. The only thing we never did, we never demonstrated when the case was ongoing.
Okay.
We never sought to evict anybody from an independent constitutional office. NASA today, they are not just talking about, and you know, when they talk about peaceful demonstrations and you're telling people run before we come for you, honestly, Hussein, even you, if somebody was telling you run before he comes for you here, you will not expect that to be anything peaceful. But if they do want, they just want to go and shout their voices hoarse, or every Tuesday or indeed every day peacefully, and in fact without interfering with other people's business, they are allowed by the Constitution. But again, they must temper that with the provisions of Article 251. If you want commissioners to be removed, if you want officers of the commission to be removed, Section 10 of the IEBC Act is right open for you. Okay, follow the procedures.
Hussein, what we need is a sober and dispassionate approach. Sober and dispassionate approach in terms of processing the critical issues that affect the management of elections, so that we are able to get an election that is well managed, an election that is accountable, verifiable, and transparent. Now, the way to approach it is not to make what I would call extra constitutional demands, because insofar as you're not able to locate them with the law, or insofar as they are on the fringes of the law, then you run the challenge that if everybody now starts making extra constitutional demands, then it signals the breakdown in the rule of law. The approach that I would privilege is one that innovates within the challenges. Are we able to say that in terms of discerning the intention that NASA has, I think they want a free, fair, and credible election. How can we innovate within the law to achieve that without resorting to extra constitutional mechanisms? Because if you resort to that, in fact, let me just underscore the letter written to the ODPP. In all fairness, and I think, Hussein, I must say, the ODPP, under Article 157, Sub-Article 11, I invite Kenyans to check the Constitution. The ODPP is duty-bound. He has an unqualified obligation to make sound prosecutorial judgment, whether in terms of directing law enforcement agencies to investigate, or whether in terms of preferring prosecution. If you want to, if the manner in which he has proceeded of inquiring, requiring the police and the EFCC to commence investigation against IBC, for all the charitable assumptions about the intended benefits, should anything, for instance, happen that now these agencies return a verdict that indeed Chebukati or Chiloba is the person that tampered with election, now two things happen. One, his credibility and integrity to continue sitting in that office is completely obliterated.
And that's my next question.
Now,
that's the next question I would want to ask you,
yes,
all of you, by the way. But Honorable Badi has talked about it when he says the election is in 35 days' time. Or 60 days, 35 days. The election is 31 days' time. The nature of investigations, we know, I mean, the investigations are supposed to end up with prosecutions. They could touch on anybody at the IEBC. Would you say, if the investigations go on, because he said 21 days, 21 days, maybe 10 days to go to the election, then we get a verdict that the investigations have found the chairman, for example, other commissioners, even the CEO culpable, and they should now be prosecuted?
Let me just...
My question is, would you want to go with the same people who are being investigated? Would you want them to still go on and manage the next election? Well, having been or being investigated over mismanaging an election that had just happened a month ago?
Let me say this. If anybody who is involved in the management of elections was to be found culpable after an investigative process, definitely nobody would expect that person to carry on with the elections. And there would be time, within 21 days and another 10 days. It doesn't take you a month to replace an officer. And if anything, the commission works as a commission, not particular officer.
It can take you more than a month to replace commissioners of IEBC.
Well, commissioners,
or even the chair.
Actually, I'll tell you, currently with the current legal setup, we have no mechanism in law of replacing commissioners.
So what would happen? That's my question, because these are investigations that are going on. We don't know what the end result will be.
I think those are challenges now that we are confronted with, and that's why I appreciate what the judges in the Supreme Court ruling. At least one good element of the judgment was that they did point. There were pointers that indeed there are legal interventions, legislative interventions that need to be done. And that is a challenge between us and the minority in Parliament, then both in the National Assembly and the Senate, to make sure that we have legislation that indeed is able to sort out some of these challenges. Two, if you are to get a commissioner or two culpable, the commission has, I think, a quorum of 5 commissioners currently under the current legal provisions of the IBC Act. Therefore, the commission would still go on. And therefore, you're also looking at the commission as an institution, not particular individuals running the show. Therefore, all you need is to allow IEBC for the time being to be able to prepare for a free, fair, and credible election. The other notion we must disabuse is what NASA is trying to make Kenyans believe, that they are the only people interested in a free, fair, and credible election. Remember Hussein, it is our win as Jubilee that was taken away by the Supreme Court. We are therefore more interested in a credible process, more than NASA. What NASA is interested in is violence.
Let me get
nothing else.
You know, first of all, I think my colleagues should appreciate that there is Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which talks about holding public office. And that when you hold a public office, you hold it in trust. And that you conduct yourself in a way or in a manner that would bring honor and dignity to the people of Kenya. And therefore, the moment your performance is in doubt and is questionable and you are indicted, the honorable thing to do is to leave and vacate office. This discussion around the process is too long, it's lengthy, it doesn't hold water. Chiloba can leave office for 35 days until after election. If he thinks and he believes that he did a credible job, why can't he leave office? He says, fine, if my integrity has been put to question and my ability to run this election has been put to test, the honorable thing for me to do, because Kenya is bigger than I would quit the office. I even take unpaid leave, or even take paid leave with the agreement with the commission for 35 days until after election. Then he can come back. Now, the issue,
you have the reasons why you have some.
The issue.
You have the reasons why you have some officials you want out.
Yes.
For example, Chiloba.
We have a number of reasons.
But these are investigations you want them investigated and you want them to leave, but the investigations into IBC in totality. For example, we saw the minority leader in the Senate, Honorable Wetangula, yesterday saying Chebukati was just a victim in all this. Chebukati should not leave. How do you establish who leaves
First of all,
and who doesn't leave? Because if Chebukati was the one you sued in court, and he was defending as a second petitioner, defending what IBC did.
Beyond that, Hussein, Chebukati is the guy who signed the 34C on a fake form.
Okay.
I think, Hussein, first, we have made it very clear that we are aware how difficult it is to remove commissioners as we speak. Secondly, if Chebukati leaves today, there will be no commission. There will be no IBC. Why? Because he's the only lawyer in that commission. And being the only lawyer is the only returning officer. And for you to replace Chebukati, you need a president. The president we have today cannot make any appointment. And therefore, we would put ourselves in a terrible constitutional crisis. Again, we are alive to the fact that we separated the powers and the functions of the Secretariat from the Commission. I would tell you that I have participated in all legislations creating the current IBC from the 10th Parliament to date. Attempt was made, and for good reasons, to give more powers in terms of management of the electoral process to the Secretariat, which powers they are abusing today very badly. And that is why we are saying that if there are people who are supposed to be held responsible and accountable, it is the Secretariat. And that Secretariat is led by none other than Chiloba. Okay, you saw the letter from Chebukati. Whether it was leaked or not, it is a letter that now is in public, it is a domain. And therefore, I don't think we should condemn the leakage. We should discuss the content of the letter.
Okay,
yes.
I think we're saying it's possible to identify the settled approach, what is not contestable. The fact is this: if the ongoing investigations are able to return criminal culpability on the part of any commissioners or the CEO, their integrity and ability to continue serving will be cast into significant doubt, and they'll not be able to continue. Now, Section 7 of the IBC Act, happily, in fact with great relief, provides that the absence of any commissioner cannot jeopardize the workings of the commission. That, in Parliament's wisdom, was a good thing, because what it means, unlike what Mheshimiwa Mbadi is saying, the commission can actually be operational insofar as even a commission is there. The kind of innovation that would be needed in terms of the declaration of the winner, because that is done by the chairperson of the IBC. In the absence of the chairperson, the next person shall announce, because the law is not removed from common sense. If the election is well conducted and the results are there, Chebukati for one reason resigns, or because I think once your integrity has been cast into significant doubt, you probably may just want to resign. So if he does resign,
so what would you?
If he resigns, the commissioners that remain will probably continue.
Okay.
Now, that analysis, Hussein, sort of relieves practical steps, realities, some lived realities. You are relying on these commissioners to continue prepare, and that's the question I'm posing. The contradiction in all this. You are relying on this commission to continue the preparation to deliver free, fair, credible, verifiable election. At the same time, you are investigating. I'm just posing the question, what is urgent and what is important? It is very important that indeed the question of illegalities and irregularities be settled. Must it be settled within the next 31 days? What is urgent? That's a debate Kenyans must have. Because then you must choose.
What do you think is urgent?
What is urgent? Because you have a strict timeline that election must be delivered in 31 days. Now, I wish we would have privileged an approach that innovates within the challenges, delivers the elections, the investigations, even if they are ongoing, we will still demand an outcome. You get?
Okay.
Now, is it possible, Hussein, to innovate within the challenges? What is it that we care for the country that we must demand as our own irreducible minimum, not just NASA irreducible minimum or Jubilee irreducible minimum, but what is irreducible minimum to give us a transparent, verifiable, and accountable election, and we try to work towards achieving those.
Okay, and you've just said if your integrity is tainted or credibility is tainted.
Yes.
An election is also a matter of credibility. As we speak right now, IBC's credibility is tainted. And you're saying the urgent thing would be to hold the election first with a commission that has been tainted already, with a commission that has managed or has been found to have managed an election previously just less than a month ago, and there were irregularities and illegalities in the same commission?
Let me deal with that anxiety. Election management is about perception. If you heighten the perception that the election, already the Electoral Commission was already impugned because the court said the law was not complied with every step of the way, but the court also was gracious enough and perhaps realistic and gave them an opportunity to redeem themselves. So what would have expected is IBC to communicate with clarity, owning up to some of the mistakes, and then sharing with the public how they intend to innovate within those challenges to deliver.
They done that according
now,
to you?
They haven't done that, but listen, Hussein, the thing is this. If you continue, if you impugn the integrity or the credibility of the commissioners and the IBC to continue holding, to continue preparing, what you deepen the crisis and the perception that IBC is in fact not able to innovate within the challenges is deepened and widened. And the outcome of that investigation was saying what is being left unattended, IBC must, remember in terms of Section 6 of the Election Offences Act, the framing of that report must match what has been calibrated under Section 6 of the Election Offences Act. It might as well mean their investigations may reveal that IBC in fact colluded with some officials in NASA or in Jubilee. That will also make their participation in that election no longer tenable. And
10 days to the election.
10 days to the election. I know these are integrity issues.
Yeah.
We need to resolve them. And let me tell you, Hussein, the dilemma we have as a country, the Constitution did not anticipate that if an election must be cancelled, the Electoral Commission must be impugned. If you look at the reading of the Constitution, we seem to have privileged an approach where election fraud and falsification could have been attributable to one of the political players, not the Commission. Okay. Now that the Commission has been impugned, we need to reflect on how we rehabilitate the Commission going into the election, considering the strict timelines.
Hussein, allow me just to speak about what Senator Wetangula said yesterday. Mark where Senator Wetangula was speaking in Trans Nzoia, the home county of Chebukati. That is why he was saying what he was saying yesterday. But again, remember, Chebukati is the same person. It has been said, and it was reported that the Form 34C, that none other than Chebukati appended his signature on, did not have security marks. Therefore, if you're calling on people to get out of office on the basis of irregularities, like that one signing a form that doesn't have security marks, then Chebukati is one of the people that John Mbadi and Wetangula should be calling also to leave office. But John Mbadi is seated here now telling you, no, we can't do that because there is no mechanism to replace the returning officer of the presidential election who is the chairman. But at the same time, he's ignoring the same provisions under the same constitution and the same IBC Act on how you remove a commissioner from office. Hussein, I'll tell you this, and John Mbadi knows this as well as his party leaders know it. These people are simply not interested in an election. They know the results will be the same. Uhuru Kenyatta and Jubilee will still emerge as winners if you're talking about numbers. If you're talking about winning on technicalities, those are the things that we are saying that is a new challenge we have. And that is up to us as legislators, because John Mbadi and Moses Wetangula are in parliament today as minority leaders in the Senate and in the National Assembly, courtesy of the same process through the same IEBC. Not another IEBC, not another Chebukati, not another Chiloba, the same one.
Okay, very briefly, buddy.
You know, this argument by Kimani Ichung'wah is the same old, tired argument by Jubilee. I think someone takes them for some training to tell them what to say, and it's like a script. It's like a script that they are producing of saying that NASA is not ready for elections. I don't know whether when we went for election on August 8th, we didn't know that was an election. We were ready on 8th August, and we are still ready. So I want to tell Kimani Ichung'wah to stop this unnecessary posturing and chest thumping that some people are ready and others are not ready. We are very ready, but we are not ready for any election. We are ready for a credible election. That is the point of departure between NASA and Jubilee. And I want to remind Kimani Ichung'wah that calling for people's resignation is not a preserve of NASA. If you feel that Chebukati has done a poor job, why don't you call for his resignation? Why do you have to wait for NASA to call for that? No, let me just talk. You know, when you were talking, I was very quiet. Yeah, I didn't agree with what you were saying, but I kept my cool. So my point is, if Jubilee feels Chebukati has committed a crime, let them ask him to resign. Let them not wait for NASA to do for them what they feel should be done. I want to also add that even if there is no criminal, assuming there is no criminal culpability on the part of Chiloba and his team isn't the mere indictment by Supreme Court that there were irregularities and illegalities committed in this electoral process enough to have Chiloba ask himself a number of questions.
Okay.
What were the issues? Just allow me to say these two things. What were the issues that led the Supreme Court to annul this election? They are there in black and white. Can you tell me that if those things are true, and we have no reason to doubt them, that Chiloba did not know about them? Finally, this discussion and the talk about some people have been sworn in as members of parliament. What went to Supreme Court is the election, dispute on election of the president.
Okay.
Note that if there is anyone who is disputing the election of John Badi as MP for Suba, that case is in Homa Bay High Court. It cannot be at the Supreme Court.
Okay, very briefly, I want you to respond to this very briefly each. So on when is the IBC is supposed to meet President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, the NASA candidate, or their representatives? You're starting demonstrations on Tuesday. Are we to assume you're not going to honor that meeting? You're not going for that meeting? You're not going to have a talks with IBC and Jubilee?
I think that meeting is overtaken by events.
It won't happen.
We had prepared for a meeting which they did not treat. They treated so casually. So we cannot be kept there waiting for IBC to meet us as and when they want.
Okay.
First, I'll tell you, when John Badi challenges us to ask for the resignation of Chebukati, of course, he would be very excited to hear us ask for that. But again, we are people who respect the rule of law, the Constitution. If we needed to do that, we would ask for it. If, as and when IEBC calls for any meeting regarding the conduct of elections, Jubilee is always ready. Of course, Uhuru Kenyatta will not see himself sitting on the same table with Raila Odinga, the candidate. At IEBC, he will send his representatives, and I think you saw from the last meeting is only that they were a bit late, a few minutes late, but the Deputy President and the two majority leaders in Senate and in the National Assembly were there. And we are ready and we are willing to sit down and agree on what needs to be done, and that is what I said. The challenge also is on us as members of parliament, that where there were irregularities because of certain things, be it the form, of forms we are using, we can always iron out those things in the National Assembly and in the Senate. Very
briefly, Steve. And this meeting was supposed to be more of a solution. What do you think is the solution now?
I think both Jubilee and NASA must abandon the aggressive posture and adopt a beneficial approach that innovates within the challenges. We have challenges with IBC. Remember, the election was impugned because of IBC's conduct, not because of Raila or Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, the sooner we realize that we can negotiate a beneficial approach that prefers a model where you innovate within the challenges, what is it that can we do, that we can do as a country to assure us about the integrity of the electoral process? Now, that, if we can capture that, then we can proceed in the next 31 days being already assured that we'll have an election. Now, should there be a collapse or maybe the crisis deepen and widen beyond what is already there, and let's say someone now then decides that you're not going to go into election, what I foresee is that someone again moving back to court to seek judicial interpretation, because you see now one of the advantages we have as a country governed under the rule of law is that the judiciary, in terms of technical division of labor, they have the ultimate role in terms of interpreting the Constitution definitively, finally, to give us a way forward. If the crisis deepens and widens beyond what the political actors are now saying.
Okay, we have to wind it up there, but of course there's an interesting week ahead, a defining one really, ahead of the repeat or the fresh poll ordered by the Supreme Court. Thank you, Steve Ogola is a lawyer, and John Badi, Minority Leader in the National Assembly, also Suba MP, and Kimani Shingwa, Kikuyu Member of Parliament. Thank you all for making time for us tonight. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is GameTime2017 on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. We're back after this break.